Hello and welcome to the Property Roundup here on iPropertyRadio with myself, Carol Tallon, the show where we chat to industry experts to get a view and activity on the ground and to learn about new trends emerging. This show is sponsored by daft.ie, Ireland's most visited property website. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Suzanne Tyrrell, Director at Cohalan Downing in Cork City. Now, I know, Suzanne, you're a surveyor and member of the SASI. And today I'd really love to talk to you about maybe what's going on in Cork City. And I'm very conscious that we are both doing this interview from our cars, me in Galway City, you in Cork City. So
Yes.
full disclosure to anyone listening in and watching in. Apologies if our sound or visual quality goes a little today. We're very much on the road today, but I think that's very reflective of how the property industry operates. And in fact, I was saying to you before we started recording that actually it is more often than not that I am recording from my car because that is the nature of working on property. So look, I'm delighted you were able to join me today from your office on wheels.
That's it,
Uh,
Carol.
so you might just tell us a little bit about the firm there and essentially what kind of properties that you're dealing with.
Delighted. Colin Downing, I know the pronunciation is a little tricky.
Sorry about
So
that.
not at all. So Colin Downing, we have been in business since 1979. So yes, while our office is in the heart of the city in Cork, we expand all county wide, and all property services as well. So an awful lot of residential primarily, but commercial property and an awful lot of valuation work as well.
Very good.
So around a long time.
Very good. Suzanne, we're in the fortunate position that where we get to speak to estate agents and auctioneers up and down the country. And so it gives us a good sense of who's buying, who's selling.
Yeah.
And what we're always surprised by is that there can be such vast regional differences and there can be unexpected pockets that we find.
Yes.
And I think Cork City is an interesting market because you've got all extremes in there. So for the properties you're dealing with at the moment, let's talk about the properties that you're listing. How are you finding the second-hand homes market? Is there much turnover at the moment? What are the stock levels like?
Stock is a problem. Stock has been a problem for a couple of years now, Carol, and I'm sure all our colleagues talking to you are saying the exact same thing. It is just very light on the ground. The pockets in the city, the extremes, that's one word. There are extremely frightening prices being achieved in certain pockets of the city, and it's all about location. It's just that age-old people wanting to be in the same spot, the market just driving the guide prices through the roof. I mean, hundreds of thousands over asking prices. And it's, these little pockets, they're so niche because they're so established. There's no available land around there to build anything extra. So people know when that 1960s semi comes up, it's not ideally what they want from an energy rating point of view or perhaps layout point of view, but they're quite happy to spend the money in making it, obviously subject to having the money, in to be in the location that they want to be. So city, the south, the Black Rocks, Ballinlough, all the
Yeah.
really established um areas around the very outskirt of city itself. They really are just getting crazy prices at the moment.
But are they coming within the budgets of first-time buyers, or are you looking at maybe
Absolutely
people
not.
trading up?
Well, I mean, what is a first time buyer budget nowadays? That is the question. I have sold several houses to first time buyers where their average is about 500,000, whereas I think anecdotally you're kind of thinking a first time buyer is maybe your 300, 280 kind of region. They're a little bit older buying their houses. Um, there's still plenty, their availability of money is fantastic, but they're doing very well themselves career wise and salary wise. So hence why, there is that extra competition for those houses then, first time buyer or not.
Yeah. So, but what does that do then for people that are coming in at an entry level? Like, is there such a thing as 180,000 to be able to purchase a home? Like, what's the minimum you would need
Very
to be
rare.
bringing?
To be honest, like if you want to be in those the desirable residential areas, the des res, like you're talking 500-600 grand for your 3-bed semi.
So,
In those very niche areas now, but if you go out another little bit, um your your kind of early 2000s 3-bed semi, maybe kind of the late 300s 400 kind of region.
and do they tend to be newly built homes, or
No,
secondhand?
I'm just talking secondhand.
Okay.
The new developments then, your 3-bed semis now seem to be an average of about 420. In
Wow.
again in those better addresses, the Douglas, um, Glenthorne, Glenmire, those kind of locations.
And it's actually, you're probably only the second or third agent that I've spoken to who actually is experiencing, a lot of new homes development that is actually coming to the sales market. That's
Yeah.
quite unusual. There's a little bit around the commuter belt, but even a
Hmm.
lot of the new homes developments, they're generally forward purchased either for PRS or for by the approved housing bodies for social
Yes.
housing. And so, of course, we need all types and tenures of housing. That's for absolute sure. But the reality
Mhm.
is, a lot of the new homes stats that maybe would-be home buyers are feeling hopeful about, very few of these actually come to the market.
Very
Um,
few.
so, what's that like in Cork? Like, where are the areas that you're seeing new homes that are coming to the sales market?
It's kind of a double-edged sword, as you say. So yes, while they're being built, an awful lot of times sales agents will have such extensive inquiry lists, or call it what you will,
Mm.
that they don't come to the open market. So, buyers need to be registered with the agent to be kept abreast of updates, um, release dates. And what you'll find is that those houses will be sold to that inquiry list, hopefully in as fair a manner as one can do. But it's rare now that you'll have a show house in your waiting there for the buyer to come, that
Yeah.
you've been talking to the buyer for 6 months.
Is there an element of that in the second-hand homes market as well? As in, if so, something is coming on the market, and maybe bidders that you've seen
Yes.
coming through over the last year, missing out on one or two properties. Are those kind of buyers being, I suppose, bumped to the top of the list, getting a phone call about this
Well,
property coming
yeah, I
through?
mean, there's always, look, where it's a very personal business. So,
Mm.
there's those people that you may have been dealing with, they may have been bidding with you, they've been outbid, and regularly you would build up a relationship. So
Mhm.
while you give them the heads up, obviously you can't give them any special treatment in a
Yeah.
private treaty situation, but it is nice to give them a call and say, look, I know the house four doors down where I met you the last time is coming, and a little bit of a heads up, and people appreciate that. But it
Yeah.
is a dog eat dog, isn't it, when
Do you
when it
know,
comes to the open market?
it really is, and I'm a huge advocate for technology, but increasingly, and I suppose we found this operating immediately after the crash, that
Yes.
actually there was a lot of off-market activity, and maybe the reasons for that were different than they are now, but whether
Mm.
it's on the open market or off market, I mean, and typically even a heads up in advance of something coming to the market is enough to let the buyers know, okay, let's take a look at this area
Yeah.
again. Let's have our engineer on standby. Let's make
Mm.
sure that our approval in principle is good and in plenty of time and ready to go. So I think it's good. It's good to give that heads up, but it's also a good reminder to buyers how to behave with auctioneers, because I think as technology is increasing, maybe that relationship is in some way weakening a bit, and it's a good
I know where you're
reminder.
going.
Yeah,
I know where you're
yeah.
going. Yeah, yeah. And we have regular conversations in our office, to the same event. I just think it's, as I said, it is such a personal service,
Mhm.
that you're involved in buying and selling property. Like, it doesn't get more stressful, when you're dealing with that kind of money. And I think not having that personal touch would be sad.
Yeah.
Just to be able to coordinate and hold hands, as we regularly say. I wouldn't like them to be dealing with a bot, to be
Well,
honest.
I suppose the other side of that is, again, a little call out to buyers to behave properly, to make sure that actually you do have I was going to say your house in order, metaphorically speaking, but that
Yeah.
you do have your approval in principle if you say you have it, that you do have your deposit and all ready to
Yes.
go if you say you have it, and not to waste people's time as well, because I
Indeed.
think it has always been the situation that any experienced agent can tell when somebody's ready to go and
Yeah.
committed, as opposed to just tire kicking. And I actually, speaking to agents, particularly in say West Cork or up
Mm.
and down the West Coast or in coastal areas, they talk about the same would-be home buyers coming in summer after summer after summer when they're spending a few weeks near the beach, and they have this
Yeah.
idea, we should really do a
The
holiday home here.
romantics.
Yeah, and now in saying that, actually, I think it was an estate agent in Clifton that said to me, well, actually, do you know, we've often sold to those people, but it could be the third or fourth summer they've come in looking.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
do have to be a little bit patient, but buyers do really need to show a bit of good faith here as well. So, I mean, just so that we can get some clarity on what that looks like when you're
Mm.
meeting buyers. How are
Hmm.
you assessing them? How are you making sure that you understand, so that if they don't
Mm.
if they don't get access to this particular property, or they can't, they're not the eventual successful bidders on one particular property, to make sure that they're serious, you understand their requirements well
Yeah.
enough to bump them to the top of a list when another's coming around.
Yeah, I mean, you do just with general small talk, as you're walking around showing the property, you do like to get a bit of a handle as to what their situation is, what their background is,
Yeah.
how experienced they are in this house searching journey. Unfortunately, when you find out it's their first house they've ever looked at, 99 times out of 100, they're not going to be your buyer.
Yeah.
That would just be,
Yeah.
it just doesn't happen. So, as you know, generally speaking, walking around, you will get a bit of a feel. And then, you come down to brass tacks if you are talking about money, how prepared they are from a mortgage point of view, or finance point of view. Do they have a property to sell? Timing is a big factor nowadays. And unfortunately, because it is as competitive as it is in the market, when you hear that somebody isn't as ready to go as they should be, unfortunately, they're just kind of falling down the ranks then, of as the appeal for your client. Because at the end of the day, it is nearly in certain areas now, in those hotspots, it is it is a seller's market,
Yeah.
so
Well, look,
sometimes.
you might just talk us through who is selling in the second-hand homes market at the moment. Are you dealing with, and again, I presume this would change area to area,
Mm.
but in the second-hand homes market, are you seeing many people who wish to trade up and down, up or down, or are they, what are the reasons for sale? Are you seeing many investment properties coming to the market?
Investment properties have slowed down a little bit. We had a large influx of them. Kind of 18 months ago, we found that a lot of long-term tenants, or sorry, long-term landlords, that maybe, would only have had one investment property, would have bought it in the time of the boom, that kind of story. Um, the the local authority were coming in, doing their health check, and then offering them, handing over the snag report, and it was just not feasible for these people to carry out the works that would have been required for the building regs. So I found a lot of properties were coming to the market then. That's kind of slowed down a little
And
bit.
as a matter of interest, who bought them? Did any investors come in to take their place, or did they tend to go to first-time buyers?
Invariably, it was owner occupiers. The ones that I would have handled, Carol, invariably they were owner occupiers. Yeah, and starter homes. First time buyers, because they would have. There's two in mind there now, and they were in the city centre, older townhouses. So it was lovely, a new lease of life then for those locations, which is good. The gentrification, as they call it. And then your trader uppers and trader downers. My heart goes out to the trader downer. What I'm finding is that, they're selling a house that they've worked 20, 30 years in,
Yeah.
finessing. But it is too expensive to run, or, it's just too labor intensive. And they're thinking, I'll just downsize to a little something, a little garden, and they have their wish list, and God help us, it's just not out there.
Yeah. Is the difficulty that it's not out there, or it's not out there within their existing community?
Yes, within the community and within budget. So yes, they may have a 100% asset there in their own home, but they probably wanted to hold a little bit of money back as well for a bit of quality of life. They don't want to be spending it all on a property. And if they are in one of those des reses, unfortunately, every penny will probably have to go into it. And then from a new homes point of view, I think a lot of the new housing is kind of geared to the family unit.
Yeah.
So if you were, a single person, a widower, those I'd say like a generous 2-bed. We've a couple of 2-bed houses now in and around the 900 square feet, and they were fantastic sellers to single buyers of all age groups, but just not enough of them.
Yeah, that's an issue that's coming up all the time, and it feels like a problem that actually that policy could quite quickly address. So essentially, we know that there's people who want to right size, which would free up a home for a larger family, but we do know they want to stay within their area. But most of these areas, while there might not be available houses at the moment that fit the requirements, purely because these requirements are quite new. We just didn't really build houses like people want to downsize into now. But the reality is there's infill sites, there's underused spaces. And one of the proposals that's been talked about that, and I don't know, are there areas around Cork City where the gardens or the plot sizes would be large enough to allow this? But essentially a policy of allowing right-sizers to be able to build a smaller or muse type property in their own garden, and then either sell or make available the existing home. Are there sites or gardens in residential areas around Cork City? From memory, most of my time spent house hunting in Cork, the gardens were particularly small.
Yes, no, they are. Yeah, the little yard. It's funny, actually, I'm looking after a development at the moment on Quaker Road. I don't know if you'd be familiar with it. Again, in the heart of the city, but they would have had back gardens extending to nearly 100 feet long. And clients of mine bought 3 houses. And in the back gardens of those houses, built exactly as you described now, there's 4 detached 2-bedroom homes. Now, it was quite a drawn out process from a planning and a development point of view, but their planning went in circa kind of 2018. And the harsh reality is if that went in today, they wouldn't get such a low density.
Yeah.
They would have to put in multiples, your apartments, duplexes, maybe a 3-story apartment, 4-story apartment block. You wouldn't get the low density.
Again, what that's telling us is that not only do we not have the stock that people want to trade down to, which would free up valuable homes in prime areas, but actually we're not even providing for it in the pipeline, and that's a real problem, actually. As a matter of interest, those particular units on Quaker Road, were they sold to owner-occupiers, or who went into those?
Yes, all owner occupiers. Now some on the market still. They're a little bit of a higher price point, Carol. So, that pool is a little bit smaller, and that's quite fine.
Are those particular homes suitable for people trading down?
Yes. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah.
Yeah, they are. They're lovely.
Have you attracted much interest from that cohort?
There's been, yes, I have, absolutely. Yeah. And then sometimes what you'll find with those right sizing, the reality of it then, these are, I suppose, it would be ideal for a second home.
Yeah.
They're just that little bit maybe smaller than what they would be used to. So what I've found is that several there's purchasers, they'll go away, think about it, and they leave saying no, it's too small, but then they come back and say, actually, I just need to get rid of the stuff. It's just not big enough for the stuff. But it's a very special development, Katie. It would just take an awful lot of boxes for people.
Are people who are toying with the idea of right sizing? I'm saying right sizing, but I am specifically thinking of those in larger homes. We know there's 250,000 homes in Ireland where there are 2 or more bedrooms not in regular use.
Yes.
So for people who are looking to kind of shrink down the amount of space they have and that they have to maintain and heat and everything, are they surprised that they're not saving much money doing this? That actually, are they surprised at how much they'll have to pay for less space.
Yes. Yeah. 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 And they and one couple springs to mind had sold their family home to do exactly that, to downsize to a better efficient home. A family bought their home, doing what
Yeah.
the idea is, but they're absolutely heartbroken with how long it's taken for them to try and find something. Just really bewildered, and that's sad.
And are they renting at the moment, or what are they
They're
doing?
renting at the moment. Yeah, yeah.
And rental is so difficult at the moment. And in fact, I spoke to an estate agent in Ennis, County Clare, just in recent weeks, and
Mm,
he was talking about a potential policy that could help people who were in that position of wanting to downsize or right size. Essentially, something that would almost bridge the gap to allow them buy something new. So a
mhm.
finance product that would help them buy something new, and then they bring their home to the market. So it means that while there might be that slight
Yes,
uncertainty of what price will be achieved for their own home, they know their house is sold. They, and they understand their closing
yes,
dates and when that's going to happen. And it feels like a really simple financial bridging product would
yes.
actually allow this to happen in a way that
I
doesn't
know.
cause undue stress to
That's
families.
it.
And it's just not happening. So there are definitely small things that could happen. It's in terms of the buyers, I'm really surprised but slightly disheartened to hear about the budgets that first-time buyers have in Cork, because that tells me that actually there's maybe working people, working couples that will never be able to buy in Cork. So are you seeing more people move not by choice, but because of financial necessity out of the city and into some of the regional towns?
The regional towns, exactly. I only passed it there the other day now, Macroom. I understand there's several, well, not several, but one or two new developments there that are selling very well, and people using it as a commuter town.
Yeah.
Mallow is seeing that as well. And with improved road networks, it's not as laborious perhaps as it was, 10 years ago. But there's a bit of a trend, isn't there? This happened in the just pre-crash times as well. There was houses being built in towns that we'd never heard of.
Yeah.
You're looking on the map, oh God, that's where that place
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
But look, I think the services have improved in those towns as well. And at the end of the day, they are fantastic A-rated houses. The standard is so good.
Yeah, but you also like since then we've had not just the rollout of broadband, but actually COVID that allows people, and hybrid work that allows many
Yes,
people to work or commute less frequently, and that's
indeed.
going to open up a lot. Actually, post-COVID, what behavioral changes have you noticed in buyers, whether they're first-time buyers or indeed investors or people looking to trade up or down?
Well, there's several. I think people are prioritizing lifestyle more. Um, there's some that are just not willing to compromise. They want a certain house type, they want a certain location. They're quite happy to wait for it. I think I- we're just a little bit more headstrong, perhaps.
Yeah.
And the home office, of course, we need a workspace. Invariably, somebody's working from home at some stage. Um, I've regularly shown, smaller properties to couples, and they both look at each other and they were like, no, because they
We
both
won't be
work from
able to.
home. They
Yeah.
were like, no, this isn't going to work, us both sitting in the one room. So that's interesting, isn't it?
Um,
Yeah.
I wonder, is that a trend that's been properly taken on board by new homes developers? And in fact, I was at the Academy of Urbanism conference in Galway just last week, and
Yeah.
one of the lecturers from the University of Galway, from the planning discipline, she was talking about how years ago it was considered good estate planning that there would be, a window over the kitchen sink so
Yeah.
that the mothers who were at home chained to the kitchen sink could look out
The
the
outlet.
window, and the green would be outside and they could see children playing on the green. And
Yeah.
she made the point that no, that's just not how it works anymore. We need the home office at the
Yeah.
front of the house spacing over who's coming and going into the estate
Nice.
like that. And it's and to take that one step further, a home
Mm.
office right might be seen as a necessity now, but actually two home offices might actually be the necessity for the reality of most working homes right now. I haven't seen that reflected really in any of the new home schemes, or even the
No, not.
ability.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's the third bedroom, isn't it? It's the box room that's used temporarily, or it's never kind of an official
yeah,
workspace or office space. Larger houses now, the say 2,000 square foot houses invariably would have the room for
yeah,
um a home space. But no, your three bed semis,
yeah.
you're on the kitchen table or the box room, isn't it?
But again, it's probably just the nature of how things has changed. Things have changed. So, for example, like you sitting in your car in Cork City,
Yeah,
me sitting in my car in Galway City, and we're able to record this, and
isn't
we
it
have
wonderful?
all the digital tools. So it is really good, and there's been great freedom. But it's still the challenges. The challenges are still immense for people who are trying to get on the ladder, even though I hate that expression, but quite frankly, that is the
It is
reality
the reality.
they are
Mm,
trying to do. And I know the government grants, have the government grants made a big difference in terms
massive.
of new homes, but also for second-hand homes for derelict or vacant properties? Have you seen
They
much
have
of
been
that?
fantastic. The derelict homes, personally, not as much. There's just one in particular now in the last couple of months. But it is fantastic. I think it's a great incentive, and I think in those kind of rural towns as well. I'm excited to see what that'll bring for people thinking outside the box. Moving back into the main streets and the high streets. I think that'll be lovely to see. The first time buyers, it's just harrowing.
Yeah.
The cost of property, but then as my clients remind me daily, the developers, it is so expensive to
Yeah.
meet the building regulations that have been set out there.
Mhm.
Um, and what I think I'm starting to see in newer released properties is the floor plate getting a little bit smaller. Now there's still a good availability, but before, your three bed semis were a minimum of 1,000 square feet for the last kind of 8 or 9 years. But there's a few now, and they are starting to come sub the
Yeah.
900 to
Yeah.
maybe try and get the values down. Um,
But
but
also
I,
to
I don't
comply
know.
with rules around compact settlements and to hit our density targets as well. So I
Density,
mean, there's
density. Yeah,
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 there's a lot. But I'm glad you used the word excited to see what can happen in some of the rural towns and villages,
yeah.
because I don't, again, I'm a huge champion for rural Ireland, and I want people living in rural Ireland. I want that
Mm,
vibrancy. I want them starting businesses. I want them bringing their families and keeping schools open. And
absolutely.
I think the town centre first policy and some of the village centres, we haven't seen what potential they'll unlock yet. But actually, what
Mm,
we need is for home buyers to think a little differently, to be a little bit brave, and to take on a property, so possibly a new home in a new area that they get to almost build a life in, and where they could feel they could have that sense of community, but also to actually see the derelict homes in these in the village and town centres and on the outskirts as well, the infill sites, the underused spaces. There's just so much potential in our towns and
there
villages,
really is.
but
Mm,
we need a bit of a movement, because people make places, and so we need lots more people going in that will attract
yeah.
more people again, and then that kicks off the businesses and the industries and the things that can support a lifestyle. Because I think what we don't want is, and you touched on it earlier, this almost ghost estates that we were left with after
Mm,
the crash, where
mm,
houses were built, but no
mm,
communities, no facilities, nothing else. And we saw,
yes.
our early junior minister, Jan O'Sullivan, one of her first jobs was to actually make safe these ghost estates, and some of those did just have to be knocked.
They
I,
did.
I
Yeah.
I don't see that happening. I don't see that would happen today. But the reality is, I think what we need to learn from then to now is that we're not. It's not just about building houses. We have to build ability for the community to thrive.
Mm.
And so that's lots of different things like activities, facilities, ability to be able to run businesses there, so
Indeed.
actually good broadband everywhere. So just I'm conscious of your time. So I suppose for people listening in here who are on the cusp of, getting their mortgage approval or just going through the process or hoping to buy over the next 6 or 8 months, what kind of advice do you have them to kind of get started and set them on the right path?
Be patient. It's not an easy process, but have faith. It's so true what you say, from an agent's point of view, we are human at the end of the day. Do build up a relationship with the agents. We're not just robots. It is our business to make sure that we can get property sold and sold well over the line. So having open lines of communication is paramount. And maybe just start to think outside the box. There is great comfort, of course, going into a new housing development, for example, or into that really nice estate that you've been admiring. But if it's too expensive or you can't afford it, just see what else is out there for you. That maybe if I changed the paint color, if I ripped up the carpets, if I changed the kitchen doors, what would it mean? We are very visual people, and I do see buyers there and they just can't see past what they're seeing in that very moment in time in that particular house. But if youth is on their side, these are things that can be quickly done for relatively small money. So just be patient and keep the faith.
I'm going to add persistence to that patience. But I'll actually just a final point there. Just a final point, because people kind of have an inability to visualize. Have you explored any virtual staging tools or anything like that that could help people reimagine what a space could be?
I have explored them. I haven't kind of seen I just think sometimes they're just so over the top. As to what they're portraying, somebody looking at it going, yeah, and that's going to cost me how much?
Yeah.
But I did look into, the physical staging. And we have kind of dabbled in it a little bit. It is still quite expensive, I suppose, from a vendor's point of view. But I would like to think that that'll be kind of more widely used. Any client that would listen to our advice in preparing a house for sale, small things now, Carol, as I say, a good declutter, a fresh paint, a little bit of jobs done in the garden, you are getting that money back tenfold nowadays, because there is that perception that any kind of work, it's just too expensive. We can't get the trades. So if they can see that work done, they're more than happy to pay for it. So that's a relatively new trend, that you are getting the money back, on your investment, which is good.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because you're taking the fear and uncertainty out. Well, then, look, as a final point, I would just maybe urge anybody who is thinking of buying over the next 6 to 12 months to check out Housing for All on the government website, just for a list of all the supports and schemes, because there's so many.
There's so many, Carol. The affordable housing scheme.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it is wonderful.
And actually, I think that buyers might be aware of some of them, or not all of them. And actually, one of the things I've seen with speaking to would-be first-time buyers is that they almost assume that a lot of the grants, particularly for, say, anything got to do with second-hand homes, are only available for people who are availing of social housing, not for home buyers at all. And that's not the case. Actually, there's a great array of supports for people, whether you're buying a new or second-hand property. So definitely go to the source, the housing departments, Housing for All, and take a look at that, and best of luck on their journey. Suzanne, thank you so much for pulling in the car and having this conversation with me today. I really appreciate it.
The sun has come to Cork in the meantime as well, Carol.
Good.
You sent it my way.
I sent it down from Galway. That's the spirit of sharing. Suzanne, thank you so much. That was Suzanne Tyrrell, Director with Cohalan Downing in Cork City. My thanks to producer Katie Tallon and to the production team at Hear Me Roar Media. Also, huge thanks to our show sponsor daft.ie, and thank you indeed for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next episode of the Property Roundup. In the meantime, please be sure to check out all of the other Irish and international real estate and construction shows here on iPropertyRadio.com.